Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our two games is 2003's Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, the GameCube JRPG with the magical card mechanics known as Magnus, all while putting you into a guardian spirit role for the protagonist.
Following that is an unofficial fan game that takes YouTube personalities from a certain VTuber label and puts them in the ring to fight each other for dominance, featuring a soundtrack of arranged music from throughout their catalog. 2023's Idol Showdown.
It's gonna be one of those episodes, ladies and gentlemen. Strap in. I'll just tell you about a weird JRPG before Joe goes into one of his great passions in life.
I need you to know that I had to really hold back from... I have a model, like a generic model I could have used, and I almost recorded that as the intro instead of my regular webcam. I didn't do that, but I thought about it. I thought real hard.
Oh, we almost got VTuber territory for this show. Like, okay. Yeah, it's gonna be a time, but some good music coming your way on this episode. The theme between the two, because I couldn't think of anything, but once you start learning about Baten Kaitos, there sure are some character names in that game when your party is made up of Kalas, Zelha, Gibari, Liud, Zavina, and Mizuti. And I'm sure there are a bunch of puntastic names in the VTuber world.
Oh boy, there are. The best is when there's a bunch of those pun names, and then there's just Amelia Watson, a regular English person name.
Yeah, so that's our theme. Hope you're here for it. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
Well, the Hollow Cure hour count is now at about 76, but that's a story for another day. I've been playing Anonymous Code, actually.
Oh, really?
Which is the next game in the same series as Steins Gate, which we talked about last week. I have not finished it. My review is out. I had hoped to finish it before I had to put the review out. I missed embargo, and then, like, yesterday at time of recording was the release day, and I figured I should at least hit that. But I'm very close to the end. I'm on chapter 8 of 11. So I am, as far as I can tell, like, firmly in endgame territory. It's very good, honestly. Like, very good. Also, Steins Gate has been directly referenced more times than I thought it would be. Kurisu, her face is shown on screen, like, twice.
Well, they know where their bread is buttered with that series, so.
They sure do. And you know what? I'm here for it. But yeah, it's very good. If you like visual novels, it's got very good art. The character portraits are 3D models and, like, animated, like, the entire time instead of being the 2D pictures they usually are. So when the text box says this person shrugged, like, the model actually does a shrug animation while that's listing out. It's a nice touch, and it really adds a lot of personality to the game. It's fun. I like it.
That is pretty neat. Good to see, some little mix-ups like that in the visual novel genre. I am playing Final Fantasy 16. I am about 7-8 hours into it, maybe. And yep, I'm a Masayoshi Soken believer now. Having that first-hand, ears-on experience, if you will, that soundtrack is definitely going to be in our top 10. Can't say how highly quite yet, but it'll be there. It'll be there in the top 10, I think, for sure. I made it to the Act 1 narrative break, so to speak. It's a trophy and I guess a fight called Acceptance. I'll leave it at that. Those who have played the game know where I'm at, I guess. It says it's about 30% through the game, according to the home screen on the PlayStation 5. So yeah, that makes sense for an Act 1 break and what's going on and all that. Yo, that boss fight was like a final boss in any other video game. Had a really similar feel to a Devil May Cry 5 final boss. I mean, makes sense. Same combat designer coming over from Devil May Cry 5. It just feels like Devil May Cry 5 combat in Final Fantasy, which is dope. But the way that I hear people talk about this game is that, like, get ready. The boss fights only ratchet up from there. Oh, Titan later down the line. You thought Titan was sick? Wait till Bahamut, and so on and so on. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm having a good time. Very clear to see where the Game of Thrones inspirations lie, though. My goodness, that is throughout.
That is what I hear, honestly. I don't know when I'll be able to get to Final Fantasy 16. Probably not anytime soon, unfortunately, but yeah, I think you are probably, well, so the thing that might hold it back from being on the top 10 is if Square treats it like all the other soundtracks that they release and pulls it down anywhere it shows up.
I guess that might be the only thing, but we'll hope. Year end, it'll be half a year away from release. We'll see. But yeah, when you do get around to it, you're in for a good time. Got some composer follow-up news this week. A couple little headlines from the game industry and how it ties to composers we've talked about before. Lawrence Chapman, who was the composer on the game Heaven's Vault, talked about that game in episode 115 of Original Soundchat. His score for Inkle's upcoming game, A Highland Song, releases on October 6th. And then there'll be more music to come from other composers involved as the game gets closer to release sometime later this year. It should be good to hear more music from him. I feel like Heaven's Vault was one of those sneaky episodes where it's like I had never heard of the game before, and then the premise and the soundtrack really surprised me. And then we paired it with Metroid Prime, and that was certainly an interesting one as well.
I am very much looking forward to A Highland Song. The footage and stuff they've shown, it's about like somebody hiking through the Scottish countryside, I think. And it looks very pretty and it looks very nice. And if the score is anywhere near as good as his score for Heaven's Vault, then I'm looking forward to that as well. Meanwhile, there's rumors that we're getting a Nintendo Direct soon. I think the rumors are specifically saying we're getting a Nintendo Direct like this week at time of release. So
I mean, it's that time of year. They've kind of hit this week pretty consistently throughout the years, I think.
So yeah, there's a bunch of leaks and rumors coming out, but the most interesting one is that some hints have been dropped that maybe there is an F-Zero game coming. Now, whether that is a new F-Zero game or the rumored F-Zero GX remaster that has been in the rumor mill for a long time, or the newest version of the rumor that has come out like today at time of recording, being a battle royale like F-Zero 99 sort of thing. Who knows? But I look forward to Nintendo finally remembering that game series exists.
Yo, if the Donkey Kong news, because the whole rumor for years now, right, is that the Super Mario Odyssey team is working on a new Donkey Kong game. If the only Donkey Kong news is Mario versus Donkey Kong, or the minis, whatever, that'd be sad. That'd be real sad. So, I mean, it's that time of year for Nintendo to, highlight the back hat the last couple holiday months, and then let's start talking 24. What's going on? So, I'm gonna be interested to see what goes on for sure. And yeah, fingers crossed.
Have you ever played March of the Minis?
No. I feel wasn't it kind of similar to was it Nintendo Land, whatever, that had kind of a similar thing where put things in a certain place? Yeah, I feel like that was enough of that kind of gameplay for me.
I played a demo of it at one point. I don't remember how, and was thoroughly bored. So, yeah, if that's... all it is, then that's disappointing.
Hopefully, tune in next week for some Nintendo news and how that ties into composers and all. But until then, let's talk about a Nintendo-related game. It is the Nintendo GameCube JRPG, Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. And you may be listening and hear like, that's a lot of gobbledygook. I get you. It's a pretty niche cult classic JRPG, but for, I guess, those of the time, of the era, that could be a deep cut for some listeners out there. Baten Kaitos, o Aranai Tsubasa to Ushinawareta, released in Japan for Nintendo GameCube on December 5th, 2003. North America got Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, which I guess is a pretty fair and literal translation of that. North America got the game on November 16th, 2004. And then PAL got the game, PAL regions, on April 1st, 2005. So spread across 3 years, technically, for all of the three big regions there. Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD Remaster releases for Nintendo Switch this week, in a couple days, on September 14th, 2023. So, what used to be locked away on the GameCube is coming to Switch and a modern platform today. So, if any of this catches your ear, that may be the place to pick it up. The game was developed by Monolith Soft and Tri Crescendo, and it's published by Namco. Baten Kaitos is a JRPG where you play as a self-named guardian spirit that directly interacts with the protagonist through preset text dialogue tree response options. At times, characters will address the player and ask questions, giving the sensation of breaking the fourth wall. Answering questions in a rational manner that mirrors the respective character's mindset strengthens their bonds, which in turn awards benefits in the game's battle system. And what is the game mechanic that runs throughout Baten Kaitos and makes it so different? It is a magical card system known as Magnus, in which the essence of real-world objects are saved in cards for storage and later use, acting as a container for items as a sense of inventory management. Some objects are already found in their card form, while others are found and then need to be extracted into blank Magnus cards. There are over 1,000 different Magnus that exist in the game. And when you have battles, like you do in JRPGs, these battles with Magnus are both turn-based and action-based. See, each character has both an offensive and a defensive turn, where they have a brief number of seconds to quickly play a limited number of cards from their pre-built deck, or I guess, the hand that comes from a deck that you pre-build. So it gets described that there are aspects of turn-based and action-based battle systems based on collectible card games and poker. Oh yes, cards run everything in Baten Kaitos. And what is the narrative that frames this game? Well, in ancient times, prior to the game's events, an evil god, Malpercio, invades the planet and sucks all of the water out of the ocean. Well, there's that lost ocean. Legendary heroes eventually seal his power away with the 5 all-powerful End Magnus. But the planet itself is left uninhabitable, leaving humanity to migrate and live among the floating continents in the sky. Over time, this causes humans to evolve and grow wings. There you go. Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. Callus, the game's protagonist, is considered a bit of a hooligan and an outcast due to only having one wing, with the other being replaced by a mechanical wing. He travels the world to seek revenge for the death of his grandfather and his little brother. His priorities shift, though, when he starts to travel with Zelha, a good-willed but naive traveler. Together, they inadvertently release the first of the End Magnus, which is quickly seized by members of the Alphard Empire. This is a hostile nation on one of the islands. As Kalis and Zelha meet more people along the way, they learn that the Empire wishes to locate all 5 of End Magnus, which together will unseal the power of the evil god Malpercio. Big question, I guess. Can the party keep the End Magnus away from the Empire? Joe, is where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Baten Kaitos?
Nothing. I knew the name because of a song in Smash, I think. I didn't even know it had a subtitle until today. And, didn't know it was card-based. I know absolutely nothing about Baten Kaitos.
Well, we'll learn some good things today then, because it's a Motoi Sakuraba joint, and his soundtracks are always fire. So at least we'll have good GameCube soundtrack music to go with it, and that's always a good time. For me, I knew the battle theme of this game. And not because it was in Smash, but when tinkering around with like brawl music hacking back in the day, this was a song that like I really liked the sound of, and maybe I put in there and like Super Smash Brothers music hacking. Yeah, there is a song from Baten Kaitos in the Super Smash Brothers Ultimate soundtrack, but it's not necessarily from where you think. We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, I knew it was card based, but like that was about it. I didn't know it was like, oh, the cards go into like the actual gameplay beyond just battles. Like the world is interacted through these cards, and does not make me interested to play it, to be honest. I feel like implementing card games in video games is tough enough. And I feel like for me, like there's something like, Hearthstone or Marvel Snap, that's one thing. But when you start mixing in and learning, and might be a bit much for my game tastes. So it's a good thing the music is sweet, and we'll talk about that today. But yes, this game was co-developed by Monolith Soft. And so after Tetsuya Takahashi founded Monolith Soft, he discovered that he was unable to directly continue his Xenogears series due to Squaresoft still owning the rights to it. So the company's main focus became to create Takahashi's spiritual successor, the Xenosaga series. Once the company was fully established and staffed, the company then decided to start up a secondary project, primarily driven by their younger staff. And this would eventually be Baten Kaitos. But both Monolith Soft and Tri-Crescendo had recently sent similar game pitches to Namco in 2001. And so Namco's like, why don't you just both work together on this project? It was Tri-Crescendo's first venture into full-fledged video game development. They had only previously dealt with music and sound in video games, so that's what they did on this project in addition to the battle design. After about 6 months of pre-production, game development consisted of a staff of about 50 people over the course of an 18-month time period, so about total 2 years of a process from inception to finish. The GameCube was chosen as the game's platform due to a general lack of JRPGs in its game library. Namco had Tales of Symphonia, and they're like, oh, we like that, let's get some more, and that was kind of about it. The team wanted to offer a true RPG for the user base, and they would want to eventually establish it as a franchise for the system. It was named Baten Kaitos after the star of the same name in the Cetus constellation. The name was chosen to be symbolic of rich nature and the grand world view that the team aimed to depict with the game. They also wanted it to be an anti-Xenosaga game, so basically not have it be a space opera. There are a lot of weird little details out there, especially if you're a fan of the games. Like, how are the characters designed? Like, there was one character that the game director kind of wanted to sit in on, but as far as like the English voice dubbing, little things like that didn't really resonate a lot with me, but I thought it was interesting just from a design and marketing standpoint. Early character designs initially had larger anime-styled eyes, but more realistic eye proportions were eventually given to better meld with the 3D character designs and to appeal better to a Western market. So, little things that go into character design and all of that.
The days when anime was not seen as people will buy this in the West because the West is full of weebs.
How times have changed. Now we get things like the Atelier games.
We get the Neptunia games.
Yeah. All sorts of franchises that I guess the West will still buy it. Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean reviewed fairly well, with a Metacritic average of about 80. The level of immersion with captivating art and music, the unique but rewarding combat system, the freedom given to the player through the game's many side quests, and the ability to avoid random battles, these were all praised. But the story and the game's poor voice acting, especially with the English dub, these were criticized. See, Namco expected sales of about 500,000 copies, because they had kind of a market in mind with the success of Tales of Symphonia already established on the GameCube. And Baten Kaitos maybe hit half of that. It was good enough for it to establish a cult following, and it set up another game in the franchise, so they had that going for it, though. Though it received a runner-up position in GameSpot's 2004 Best Role-Playing Game Award category across all platforms, it lost to Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. So there you go, Joe. There's that Smasher Pieces tie-in.
Perfect.
It was also a 2004 RPG.
Perfect.
Baten Kaitos Origins, known in Japan as Baten Kaitos 2, released in 2006 as a direct prequel to the original game. It had about the same critical reception and also lukewarm sales, so the franchise stalled as a result of that, with the teams then focusing on other projects. Over the years, there have been rumblings of Baten Kaitos DS and Baten Kaitos 3, maybe for the 3DS, and these supposedly entered some form of pre-production, but were canceled. While there are, quote, no current plans for a sequel, the Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD remaster, which releases on September 14th, could likely be a weather balloon to see if there's any interest out there for the franchise's future. On that remaster, though, in addition to the many quality of life improvements that come with JRPG remasters, control when you want battles to happen, speed up battles, things like that, the HD remasters remove the English voice acting. So it kind of gives you a sense of maybe that was a problem.
It was that bad, huh?
Either that or like they didn't want to pay, re-up union thing. I don't know, but just Japanese voiceover. Monolith Soft, of course, they would go on to obviously be entrenched with the Xenoblade franchise. They would also do support work on Nintendo's big open world titles. Hint, hint, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I think they did some work on Splatoon 3 as well.
Supposedly they also did a little bit of work on Scarlet and Violet, as far as I'm aware. Not enough, but some.
Whatever Nintendo game has an open world, I'm sure they borrow a little bit of help wherever they can get it. But yeah, you're right, not enough on that one. Though, after developing Eternal Sonata on their own, Tri Crescendo has also carved out a support studio role for themselves as well, with recent work on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Tales of Arise, and Gran Turismo 7.
I didn't expect Eternal Sonata to show up here. All right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The only thing I know about Eternal Sonata is that Loading Ready Run used to have a show called Unskippable, where they just watched like the opening cutscene to games and riffed over them. And it was inspired by watching the extremely poorly paced cutscenes in Eternal Sonata, which is how I learned that game existed.
It's certainly a game from what I have seen of it as well. So yeah, that's a time. The musician that we will talk about for Baten Kaitos, his name is Hideyo Takakuwa. And it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, Motoi Sakuraba, we've covered him plenty on the show. Originally talked about him in episode 20 with his work on Kid Icarus Uprising. Plenty of games are a Motoi Sakuraba joint. So you start to dive into the musicians, which is a little tricky because, you know, it's a GameCube game. So you're getting like those pretty decent, but still MIDI instruments. And yet on the soundtrack, there are musicians credited. And when you see that there's a flautist there, I'm like, we haven't talked about anyone who plays the flute. So let's talk about Hideyo Takakuwa, who was born on September 24th, 1961 in Japan. He is blood type O. And he's also sometimes been credited as Hideyo Takekawa. Hideyo Takekawa, but no, Hideyo Takakuwa. Okay. Yes, he plays the flute. He's a flautist who graduated from the Tokyo University of the Arts, though he is also proficient in other woodwind instruments. On his website, these instruments would be the shinobue, recorder, tin whistle, quena, pan flute, and ocarina. He has been a performer in media since 1990 and is still going strong today. The man's discography is immense. We'll get there shortly, but first, he's been part of some different groups, including Seatbelts.
Hey, hell yeah.
So really cool to see there. Not a member anymore, but during the Cowboy Bebop days, on those original anime albums, he's the flute player. That's pretty sick. He has also gathered other woodwind musicians to form his own ensemble called the Hideyo Takakuwa Group. And he's also part of an organization called Face Music. So yeah, the man's discography is crazy. He's been a performer on this immense list of games: Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy X, Ark the Lad, Twilight of the Spirits, Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean, Star Ocean, Till the End of Time, Romancing Saga, Drakengard 2, Baten Kaitos Origins, Eternal Sonata, Infinite Undiscovery, Sonic Unleashed, The Wizard of Oz, Beyond the Yellow Brick Road.
I didn't expect that to come up either.
I saw it and I'm like, oh, nope, I gotta mention that one. The Last Remnant, Little King's Story, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, Star Ocean, The Last Hope, Final Fantasy XIII, Final Fantasy XIV Online, Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, The Legend of Zelda, Skyward Sword, Asura's Wrath, Kingdom Hearts 3D, Dream Drop Distance, Rain, Mario Kart 8, Bravely Default, Xenoblade Chronicles X, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, Tekken 7, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Code Vein, Neo 2, Persona 5 Strikers, The Centennial Case, A Shijima Story, Fire Emblem Engage, Wolong Fallen Dynasty, and Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon.
I also did not expect the Centennial Case to come up here. Damn, that's a hell of a list of games.
And that's me cutting it short to like the ones I thought it'd be worth mentioning, because that's an incredible lineage of titles. For TV, he's done a bunch of work on anime. Of course he has. including Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Kirby Right Back at Ya, Full Metal Panic, Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, Negima, Eureka 7, Inazuma 11, Fairy Tail, Hunter x Hunter, Girls und Panzer, several series for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, including Phantom Blood, Stardust Crusaders, Diamond is Unbreakable, and Stone Ocean, Sailor Moon Crystal, The Seven Deadly Sins, Sword Art Online, Dragon Ball Super, My Hero Academia, Mob Psycho 100, and recently Pokemon Journeys. And then if you think, well, that's a bunch of anime, again, that's cutting it short. There's anime films. Loads of them. But some ones that stood out were Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva, and Promare. Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, of course, composed and arranged by Motoi Sakuraba, with Sakuraba supposedly personally performing on every track. That was in an interview that was hosted on Shmuplations, and I don't know what it means. Maybe it's, he's performing on the synthesizer that goes into the GameCube MIDI and all that. But a soundtrack album was published by Team Entertainment on December 17th, 2003. All right, let's get into that good GameCube music led by Sakuraba with the 5 critical tracks for the original Baten Kaitos. And this first track, at least in the sound test, is titled Star Spangled Journey. When the title is translated from its original Japanese to English, it gets translated directly to the end of the journey of glittering stars. Though I guess when it's brought up in the game's sound test, it is titled Star Spangled Journey. So we'll go with that translation. It's much shorter and much simpler. There's a different track that is the opening animation to the game, which there was trivia about, there's a lot of work put into it, but also apparently a bunch of spoilers into it because that's where all the FMV budget went into, and they wanted to make sure that they got certain things done. And then Sakuraba was also really, it was really difficult to line up the music with the animation because the animation kept changing and all that. But I feel like this track stood out more, and I feel like I heard the leitmotif in here throughout the soundtrack more, so maybe this is the main theme. Maybe this plays on the title screen. Not too sure. It's pretty close to the beginning of the soundtrack, so I really caught my ear there. Also, it sounds a little more live performative than the rest of the soundtrack, at least certain aspects of it. So I wonder if Takakuwa's flute work is shown off here, because some instruments here sound pretty legit. Can't say the same for all of that. We'll get to that later, but just a nice orchestral piece here, and still Sakuraba all over it. There are people who are like, oh, I can hear Dark Souls music here. Yep, it is 10 years before its time, but same guy.
You know what I hear? I don't know if it's in the clip. I wasn't watching the time to see if it was within 30 seconds. But, you are the ocean's gray waves. There's a part that's just that, and I can't not hear it. But, overall, this song is gorgeous. This is really good. Damn.
Yeah.
Especially for a GameCube game track.
Absolutely. I feel like it makes a really good first impression. But if there was one track to bring up for Baten Kaitos, it's the one that I knew about going into this game, and that's number 2 here on the Critical 5. This is called The True Mirror.
Wait, what the hell? Have I heard this song before?
Maybe. It's one of those iconic GameCube battle tracks that I feel like would go perfectly in something like Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and yet it was not in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. There is a version of this track on this album that is a guitar version, specifically titled the True Mirror guitar version, that brings in electric guitar, and it is, oh, it's sweet. It's honestly better than this version, but yet this is the main battle track in the game, so this is the one that you're going to hear more for those that have played the game. Like, this is the more iconic one to them. For me, I love the guitar version, but to really represent the game well, it's this one for sure. And yeah, it's those GameCube midis for sure, but yet there's a good bit of artistic performance here behind this. And I really dig the key change before it kicks back into the chorus. Just really neat stuff here. This is the one that has always stood out with me. I'm like, oh yeah, Baten Kaitos is that game with that True Mirror song that's really sweet. And so obviously must have stood out to you if you thought you've heard it before.
I don't know if I've heard it before, but it certainly sounds relatively familiar. I like it. I like the percussion, and it's like, it really gives it a sense of movement, and also, I don't know if it's in the clip, but this electric organ part is good.
Oh, yeah. There's so much that's good here, and it's tough to do 30 seconds, but do the first 30 seconds with a Sakuraba as heck opening. You're like, oh, it's like a Tales JRPG, battle track. Yeah, Sakuraba. Sakuraba all over it. If you're wondering, a valedictory elegy, which is that battle track that got included from Baten Kaitos and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, that's the main battle track from Origins, the Baten Kaitos 2, the prequel. I feel like True Mirror would have been the better pick, but okay. At least there's some representation for the franchise.
Hey, I mean, it's the only reason I know the series' name at all.
And that's the plus. That's, I guess, what Sakurai wanted. Number 3 on the Critical 5. Let's ramp it up a bit more. And this is called Metallic Stroke. Shred, my dude. This is the title for it, again, in the sound test in the game. But if you get the soundtrack and translate from English, it's called Vitriolic Stroke. Okay. Translation's weird. That Metallic Stroke works better for me. This is an early boss battle, and commenters are like, it's a good thing this is so good and it catches you this early, but it's a shame it's not all of the boss battles. Sakuraba says, quote, "For the normal battle music, I was asked to give it a light feeling, and that was what I intended to do, but it came out too violent, so I used that theme for the boss music instead." And this is where you get Metallic Stroke, or Vitriolic Stroke. The guitarist is named Toru Iwao, and Wow is right, because damn, it's so good. I love it.
I can 100% hear the point A to point B from here to Kid Icarus.
Yeah, for sure.
This sounds like it could be an Uprising, which is a very good thing. Kid Icarus Uprising is one of the best game soundtracks on the 3DS. This is great. And that guitarist, Toru Iwao, is doing fantastic. I do like that story of they told me to make the regular battle music just something light that would play, and then I accidentally made a metal track.
I went too hard.
Oops.
Yeah. Pretty awesome. if you want something totally different than like, oh yeah, your GameCube rock, I get that. Let's throw some techno your way. I mean, you heard on F-Zero GX. Why not in Baten Kaitos? This is number 4 on the Critical 5, and this is called Chaotic Dance.
I don't get it. When did we start talking about Jet Set Radio?
That is also the big inspiration I took from this one. You might as well be just kind of around the same era, right? With radio and future. And you know what? There's got to be something there. This takes place during the battle against Giacomo. And I don't know when a fight against Giacomo takes place, but this seems to be a fan favorite and a techno bop in this JRPG. Taking these vocal samples definitely seems to come right out of the Naganuma Jet Set Radio playbook. But you know what? I'm here for it. Like, I feel like it's a kind of a mixed bag if you like it or not. But after the rest of the music, which there's a wide range as Sakuraba does. I mean, there's some beautiful light pieces and all here, but for this to be a battle track, hell yeah, I'm here for it.
I genuinely feel like I could take this untouched and just drop it into Bomb Rush Cyberfunk and it would fit. Like 100%, I'm pretty sure it would just fit. That's unexpected. I didn't expect anything to sound like that in this game, but alright.
And I feel like that's why it had to be in the Critical 5. But we'll wrap up this 5 set of tracks with the final boss theme. This is called The Violent Storm. All right, Sakuraba's just flexing now at this point. You're getting that electric organ in there. The guitars again coming through. This is to throw everything at the screen. When you're trying to sequence it all, I just bring it on. And wow, this is so good. For really the final boss, I guess there's like a victory lap fight right after, if you will, but like this is the final boss for all intents and purposes. From what I looked into, and I'm sorry, Baten Kaitos fans, I will not be playing this game to experience it for myself, but there's a pretty darn good narrative twist in this game, and I feel like this is a good culmination after all you go through with that. So if you're a fan of plot twists and the card battle doesn't throw you off, give Baten Kaitos a shot for sure. You at least have this track to see you through on top of all the amazing music leading up to it.
I just didn't know that Richter Belmont was playable in Baten Kaitos, but it's good to know. That's what I take away from this song.
Oh yeah, he'll whip cards and throw crosses at it, yeah.
It is really Castlevania. Like, incredibly Castlevania. And again, that's a good thing. Castlevania music rules. This sounds pretty fitting for a final boss. Though when you say there's a victory lap, parts of this song sound like they probably fit better in a victory lap, but it kind of goes back and forth, I guess, for me.
Got a couple tracks here on the cutting room floor. The first one here is really cool. Things I've never heard on a GameCube before, so please enjoy this. This is called Castle in the Sand. This track also gets translated to House of Cards, but I feel like you're just going to start thinking of the Netflix show if it were like that. So Castle in the Sand works because it plays during the Zosma Tower, which I guess is a very tedious part of the game, but fans are like, you know what? This music makes it all the better. It just really improves an overall rough experience there in that level. Wow, this is so cool. The piece overall starts with building the layers up to this point that you hear in the clip, but to hear all these different things on its own, like the kind of distortion and the waving that's going on with this synth, and then this bass coming in that I've never heard on a GameCube before. What a cool vibe in this atmospheric track. Just grabbed me immediately. May not be a fan favorite or anything like that, but for a listener, I was wowed by this one.
Yeah, this has a very surreal atmosphere. Atmospheric is a good way to put it. Like, just sort of oozing this mysterious feeling in general. And yeah, this is instrumentation I can't think. It sounds a little bit like maybe something I could see in like FF7, but nothing on the GameCube that I can think of, at least. Granted, remember, I didn't have a GameCube growing up, so I've missed a ton of GameCube games, but I've since played a good amount of them, so nothing comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just super, super neat. And then the other one on the cutting room floor for me is called Survival from the Force.
That's definitely how I felt coming out of Rise of Skywalker.
You made it.
I survived.
You think this would be a title that just seems like a weird translation from Japan? No, it's the same. Survival from the Force. And it's the final dungeon area. So, yeah, it doesn't really sound like a dungeon theme, I suppose. But again, this is Sakuraba throwing out all the tools that he's got. It's just some sick drum riffs going on in this one. Just really popped out. Although there was another track called Soft Labyrinth, which went hard, and that almost made the cutting room floor. But this dungeon theme, I think, topped that one. And yeah, what a good piece to listen to.
This is a good song, but it feels like too much for a dungeon. Like, way too much. Far be it from me to tell Motoi Sakuraba how to do his job. He obviously knows a hell of a lot more than I do. But I feel like listening to this through the entirety of a dungeon, too much is going on. It sounds more like a battle theme. So I'm very surprised to hear that that's what it is.
Yeah, especially if you're like only hearing like the first 15, 20 seconds as you go to like the next battle. Like, it may be a lot. I mean, you got double bass, you got these warbling synths going on. It's a lot for just a dungeon theme for sure. What will I never forget about Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean? It's still the true mirror. Like, that's one of the quintessential battle songs from the GameCube era, and I think it's just so good. I think maybe the guitar version shows up at the end of the game as kind of like a callback. That'd be cool. I just don't see myself playing this game, to be honest. So I'm just gonna hang on to like that one track, and then like learning about that plot twist is like, oh, that's really neat. If I was gonna see myself playing through that game, I'm like, yeah, I'd like to see that in action, but I just don't see myself doing card games in a JRPG. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this honestly doesn't sound like it'd be my bag either. The soundtrack is very, very good. And I have had like very good soundtracks cause me to buy games in genres I otherwise would not like. That's how River City Girls was. But I can't imagine that I will be jumping on these HD remasters, but I'm glad they exist for the people who liked it back in the day and the people who might like it now.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like it's been a long time coming. And if you're on that bandwagon, if this appealed to you, go check out the HD remaster for sure. All right. To transition to talking about our next game, our next whirlwind experience that Joe's about to take us on. Let's talk about a fan cover, a fan remix, whether it's from YouTube, OC Remix, or originally from Nico Nico.
Wait, what?
Because back in 2008, a user on YouTube called TuengXX, TuengXX, took this recording from Who is Haratama on Nico Nico, who performed an electric guitar cover of The True Mirror. And so this user uploaded this video from 2008, and it shows. When YouTube says 15 years old, that kind of catches your attention. 2008 is what now? But yeah, wow, this cover is really good audio quality for the time, and I really enjoyed it. Plus, Nico Nico, okay.
Is this the first mention of Nico Nico we've ever had on this show?
Honestly, it might be. So please enjoy, and we'll be right back.
Alright, before we get started here, I know what you're thinking. I should probably skip this part of the episode because I don't care about any of this. Look, I get it. I understand. I know. Bear with me. Trust me, I think I can make this interesting, even for people who do not care. It's a really cool game, and it's probably one of the better fan works I've ever seen. So let's talk about it. Please put your safety goggles on, make sure your emergency abort button is in reach, and come on down this rabbit hole with me temporarily. Let's talk about Idol Showdown. It was released for PC on May 25th, 2023, developed and published by Besto Game Team. It is a 2D traditional style fighting game featuring a roster of VTubers / virtual idols from the management label Hololive. And I know that is the word that caused multiple people to get ready to press the eject button, but just give me a second. So the starting roster consists of Aki Rosenthal, Nakiri Ayame, Shishiro Bouton, Kiryu Koko, Shirakami Fubuki, Inugami Korone, Tokino Sora, and Hoshimachi Suisei. And then an update just last month, actually, the first major update to the game, added Usada Pekora to the playable roster as well. And Besto Game Team has confirmed there will be 2 more characters in the future as well. It should be noted that a majority of the cast is made up of active members of Hololive, but Kiryu Koko is no longer active. She actually graduated in July of 2021. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, I will cover it later in the lesson. Other talents are present in various ways, but the most notable being as collabs, which essentially serve as assist characters that you can call. These include Amane Kanata, Amelia Watson, Hosho Marine, Kazuma Iroha, Ayunda Risu, Okami Mio, Roboko-san, Sakura Miko, Takanashi Kiara, Muna Hoshinova, and Ozki. And every collab has 2 types of assist, a star call-in, which is a single quick attack such as Amelia's ground pound or Risu driving an isekai truck through the damn stage, or an off collab, a longer lasting move more focused around changing the battlefield in some way, such as Kiara temporarily shielding you from projectiles or Kanata stopping the stage from scrolling and summoning crashing waves that push your opponent. I will say, these assists led to my favorite patch note I've ever read for anything, being, Risu, we feel that Risu was underperforming, so we let her run you over with her truck while you're on the ground. And I don't know why that's funny to me, but God, that's funny to me. There are two kinds of bar in Idol Showdown. There's a star meter and a super chat meter. Star meter is filled like a regular special meter, while the super chat meter is filled by doing specific actions like throws or the more advanced inputs like quarter circles and stuff like that. There's also a single-player mode called the Virtual Frontier, which is a roguelike style mode where the player must fight characters in fights that have been altered with some sort of gimmick. These can include the opponent is always jumping, or the opponent is invincible, survive for 30 seconds. And during Virtual Frontier, the player can collect two types of items. There's equipable items, which modify your character's attributes, or consumable snacks that provide an effect but have limited uses, and they can only be used during fights. You can also encounter random events that can net you items or other advantages, though some might wind up with consequences if you do them wrong, which one thing I really like is if there's multiple choices for an event, and you've done it before, it will remind you what that choice did, so you don't make it again if it was the bad one. You can also get money, and this money can be used at a few character locations. You can buy items from a store run by Nanashi Mume of Hololive EN. Snacks can be bought from Bar Roboru, which is a bar run by Yukoku Roboru of Holostars JP. Items with strange side effects can literally be bought out of the back of a truck from Amelia Watson of Hololive EN. And the player can rest and restore HP in a garden attended by Pavolia Rene of Hololive ID. The goal of Virtual Frontier is to navigate your way through 3 flowchart-like maps. If you've ever seen gameplay of Slay the Spire, that's what it most reminds me of. It's like sort of a flow chart that like you can pick various paths. It makes sense when you look at it, but you have to make it to the end where you will then have to defeat a virus that has infected the Hololive servers. Now I'm going to change the usual question because I know the answer to what are your experiences with Idol Showdown is you haven't played it. I'm curious because I know it's not much, but I'm curious what your experience with Hololive is.
Okay, so I'm going to be the old man on the internet, and I'm going to reach out to the other old men and women out there on the internet. A VTuber, from what I understand, is someone doing an online broadcast like on Twitch or something like that. But their animation is in some way rigged to a computer-generated, in this case, anime-styled model. So it's as if an anime character is on screen being the person on the webcam and broadcasting, but it's a person behind it, but it's just rigged to look like an animated character.
Motion capture and facial capture hooked up to, it's usually either a 3D model or, in the case of a lot of them, something called Live 2D, which I do not understand how it works, but it is technically a 2D image that has been rigged in a way that can simulate movement, and I don't know anything past that.
Technology is amazing and how far it's come. So that said, now that we've got the VTuber definition out of the way for the old folk out there like myself, I don't have time for this. Flat out. I don't. Like, I'll catch clips that get passed around on Twitter, so I know Korone. I see her making her hilarious noises and saying abracadabra. I get it. Like, that's my baseline extent. I've seen you refer to Calliope Mori and Gaur Gura, and so I guess I could pick out what those characters look like, but flat out, I don't have time for any of this.
That makes sense. For me, I am a really big fan of Hololive, though generally really big fan means I usually have a Hololive stream open on the second monitor while I'm doing other things. And I keep up with the talents and everything, and really, that's about it. I own 3 entire pieces of Hololive merchandise. a keychain that hangs in my car, and 2 plushes. And honestly, that's enough. Though I did almost buy a hat one of them put out if I wouldn't have had to pay $20 for shipping. Please get a Western distributor. God damn it. But yeah, I really like Hololive and the community around it. And it's a hell of a rabbit hole, though. So I don't blame you. I don't blame anybody. But let's talk about that. First of all, what the hell is Hololive specifically? Hololive Production is a branch of the Japanese company Cover Corp, which itself branches off into the labels Hololive, which is where the female VTubers are, and then Holo Stars, which is the side that the male VTubers land on. Which then themselves both branch out into JP and EN for Japanese and English. And then Hololive also has an ID branch, which is Indonesia.
Oh, wow.
It's one of the biggest VTuber management labels on the internet. In fact, it might be the biggest. And it's largely only rivaled by, I think Niji Sanji is the only other label that could possibly, rival them at all. And Hololive actually did not start as streamers. They kind of wandered into that. They started as an idol management label. And for this reason, a lot of its culture has a lot of stuff in common with idol culture. VTuber culture in general brings a lot of that over. And I want to say Hololive's responsible for that, but I don't have anything to back that up. It could have been before that, for all I know. I don't know. And that includes adopting some of its terminology. So here's some terms to know. Oshi means your favorite. Graduation means retirement. An Oshi mark is an emoji that is meant to represent the talent, and fans typically put these in their Twitter names and bios to signify that they are fans of that person. So if you're wondering why there is an octopus in my Twitter name, that's why. All of them have a name they use to refer to their fans as a group, which, thinking about it on the way home today, is not actually that unusual in a world where people identify as Swifties. It's basically that. Some standouts include Deadbeats, Cronies, Zomrads, which is one of my favorites, Prisoners, which I learned about last night, and that's a hell of a name, and Chocomates. Stuff like that. And they usually have a little mascot character that is meant to represent the fans and all that. It's interesting. Cover Corp was founded by Motoaki Tanigo, or as he is known to fans and talents, Yago. He had previously worked with Sanrio to develop video game characters, which I did not know. If you don't know what Sanrio is, that's the company that made Hello Kitty. So, hell of a place to come from, honestly. And originally Cover was meant to focus on AR and VR software, but they eventually shifted gears and developed an app that was capable of mapping facial movements to an animated avatar in real time. Their first virtual idol to debut in Hololive was Tokino Sora, who I've seen a couple of clips of her telling the story. She had mentioned to her friend that she wanted to be an idol. Now, this friend is now on the staff of Hololive. I believe she's Sora's manager. And she is actually a personality known to fans. She has her own VTuber model and everything. She is known as Achan among the fan base. And so they approached Yago with the idea of doing this virtual idol thing, and she debuted in September 2017. And from there, the second member, Roboko-san, debuted in March 2018, with Sakura Miko and Azuki debuting outside of Hololive directly under Cover Corp in August and November of 2018, specifically. And then Hoshimachi Suisei, who was originally an indie VTuber, joined in May of 2019, and collectively, these 5 are referred to as Gen Zero. There have since been 7 generations within the JP branch, including the gen referred to as Gamers, which is the part that Korone is part of, which were 4 talents that were specifically hired to do video game streams, because they started kind of branching out into that. And this sort of started their role into just focusing more on bringing streaming personalities as opposed to musicians, but make no mistake, holy crap, they still produce a lot of music. A lot of music. The most recent JP generation was Holix, which is spelled Hollow X, but it's pronounced Holix because Yago doesn't know how English works. And they debuted 5 new members in 2021. Then an Indonesian branch, Hololive ID, debuted their first generation in April of 2020 with the members Ayunda Risu, Muna Hoshinova, and God, I hope I'm saying this right, Irani EO15. People call her Eofi. I don't know anything past that. There are now 3 generations in Holo ID, with the most recent gen debuting in March of 2022. And then Hololive EN, a branch focusing on English-speaking talents, debuted their first gen Myth in September of 2020. And this consisted of Mori Calliope, Takanashi Kiara, Ninamai Inanis, Gargura, and Amelia Watson. The second gen Council, as well as the solo debut of Project Hope, which was made up of the member Iris, debuted just under a year later, with Iris debuting in July of 2021 and Council debuting in August. And there are now 3 generations in Hololive EN. The third gen Advent actually just debuted like a month ago, so they're still new. Or no, it was about 2 months ago. It was in July, but recently. As for Holostars, the male branch, their first gen began debuting in June of 2019. There are now 4 branches of Holostars JP, the most recent having debuted in March of 2022. And then Holostars EN debuted their first gen Tempest last year in July of 2022, and then just added 4 new members to that gen in January of 2023. And also like a week ago, they announced a new branch called Device, but it's spelled DEV_IS, because again, Yaga does not know how English works. But they actually only started debuting like this morning at 6 a.m., and I sure as hell did not get up at 6 a.m. to watch the debut of 3 people I can't understand what they're saying. So I don't know much about them. One thing that you might notice if you ever watch a Hololive stream is that they mention perms and permissions a lot. And this is because when they started doing streaming, they just played whatever, which is normally just fine. But when you are a corporation that is now making money off of other corporations' stuff, suddenly you get contacted by one such corporation saying, hey, what's going on here? To which point, when that happened, they privated a bunch of VODs, which are still privated to this day, and they started going with the policy of they only stream games if they get explicit permission from the publisher or developer that they can do so. This includes fan games. That's how far they take it. Like fan games with characters they own, they still ask the developers for permission. And let's play a little guessing game. Hey, Peter, who do you think was the corporation that reached out to them?
It's a good question. I feel like Atlas has been especially problematic in the streaming space.
It wasn't Atlas.
Let's try Square Enix.
Nope, wasn't Square. Think bigger.
Nintendo.
Of course it was Nintendo. It's always Nintendo. It should be noted that since they implemented the permissions thing, Nintendo has given them blanket permission to play any of their games. But Nintendo is the one that essentially almost sent like a cease and desist at a certain point. Because of course they did. And there you go. You're all caught up with Hololive stuff. That's it. That's the history of Hololive. So let's talk about Idol Showdown for like 2 seconds, because there's not really a lot of info. Being a fan game, I'm not exactly going to go find a bunch of information on this game. I did try emailing Besto Games to see if I could get a little more information, but I never got a response. I assume because this is a side thing for them, and people that can make a game like this probably have pretty lucrative jobs elsewhere. So I don't really blame them. The only information I could really find is that this game was in development for 2 years before it released. And that's it. I will give a point of praise, though, cover is extremely chill about fan works, particularly fan games. They have a policy written out and public on their website, but essentially, as far as I can tell, it's, hey, are you making money off of the game? No? Cool. That's the only question we're going to ask you. That's it. Just don't profit off the game. You can make whatever.
I feel like for the info that you've given about the industry and company as a whole, I think that covers all we need to know for the game.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, there are not a lot of companies that operate that way with fanworks, and it's really, really refreshing to find one that does. I think Sega is the only other one that comes to mind. And that's specifically with Sonic. I don't know about it, how they feel about any other fan games for any of their stuff. So, reviews praise the game's soundtrack and art, as well as its in-depth tutorial. It has a very good tutorial, actually. But some felt that without the connection to the Hololive talents, there might not be much material for somebody not in the fandom. I disagree with that. All you're gonna miss is the in-jokes. That's it. Game still plays like a fighting game. Others agreed with me, felt this didn't really matter because, gameplay was good enough to be fun, even if you didn't understand all the references. And that can be seen by the fact that parts of the FGC actually embraced this game, at least for a little bit. The funniest thing to come out of that was, in order to avoid the ire of some of the more dismissible members of the fandom, they had to start changing some of the FGC slang that they used. Specifically words that had negative connotations, such as cheap or grimy, which they started replacing with kawaii and soft. And that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Pretty dumb.
That part of the fandom, in case anybody's wondering how I feel about it, go touch grass. Go outside. Just go outside. There was even a side tournament for Idol Showdown at EVO this year. That's where they announced the new character. Hololive itself also embraced the game really heavily, which was really cool to see. Almost every talent in the company played it at least once on stream. Some of them played it even more than that. A lot of the talents that are actually playable in the game noticed that the voice clips that were being used for them were not the best quality, because they were, like, obviously little blurbs taken directly out of streams, and probably some of them EQ'd to, like, remove background noise and music and stuff like that. So there are multiple clips of talents in Hololive saying, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn off the game sounds, and I'm going to give you some sound bites you can use right now. Botan specifically, I think, was the first to do it, and then Sora and I think Fubuki did it, but that's really cool to me that they went that far and they seem to be that, like, big on the project. I'm looking forward to whoever the next two characters are. Kind of hoping that they're playable EN and ID reps. All of the playable characters right now are on the JP branch, which, fine, whatever. But I would love to see one of the people that I follow be in there. I don't follow a lot of the JP branch because I don't speak Japanese, and watching a stream of somebody who only speaks Japanese doesn't do a lot for me. So, there's not really a single composer to talk about today. There is a musical lead who worked on a majority of the songs, but because these are people working on a fan game, they're kind of just internet people that do music. And I'm not going to find, like, interviews of them and stuff like that. So I'm just going to give a shout out to all of the people credited on the soundtrack as arrangers. I do also want to give a shout out to the YouTube release of this soundtrack. Lists all of the credits for each song individually. It's great. So the musical lead on the project was somebody that goes by the name Hamsley, or their real name, as far as I can tell, is Cameron Gomez. And you can find them at soundcloud.com/Cameron Gomez. You can also find them on Twitter at HamsleyX. That's HAMSLYX. I hope it's not Hamsly. I don't actually know. And I'm realizing that now. There's Nate, or Bend Nate. You can find him at youtube.com @bendnate, and at Twitter @reallymenate. Neko TJ, you can find on SoundCloud under Neko TJ, soundcloud.com/Neko TJ. He has a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Neko TJ_. You can find him on Twitter @NekoNyanTJ. Yamakusa, who you can find their YouTube at youtube.com/Yamakusa, their Twitter @Yamakusa_piano, and they have a website called yamakusap.com. I do want to give a shout out. It's not a song we're going to talk about, but they did an arrangement of Asuki's song Inochi, which convinced me to go listen to the original, and it might be one of my favorite songs now. It is genuinely very, very good. Master Jonald, which is a great name. I love it. You can find their stuff at masterjoe.bandcamp.com, and that's J-O, no E in there. YouTube.com/@JonaldChua. Is that a new thing on YouTube? Because some of the channels have an @ and some of them don't, and I don't know why.
Yes, that is a new thing on YouTube. It's ridiculous.
That's stupid. And you can find them on Twitter @MasterJonald. There's G Galactigal. You can find them at youtube.com/@GGalactigal, and on Twitter @GGalactigal, and then Auricross, with their Twitter being @Auricross, AURICROSS. And that's all the arrangers that have been credited on the game so far. And discography, I don't know, man. Idol Showdown. I can't exactly go on VGMDB for these folks, so. But the soundtrack in itself includes arrangements of music from various Hololive talents, these including Tokino Sora, Hoshimochi Suisei, Shirakami Fubuki, Aki Rosenthal, Usada Pekora, Sakura Miko, Inugami Korone, Mori Calliope, Muna Hoshinova, Roboco-san, Shishiro Botan, Akai Hato, aka Hachima, Tsunomaki Watame, Kiryu Koko, Ozki, Tsukumo Sana, Kureiji Ali, Pavolia Reine, Hosho Marine, Nino Mai Inanis, Uruha Rushia, Ironi EO15, I forgot she's on here twice, and Hololive Idol Project in general. I'm very glad I did not trip on any of those names. I expected to fully. And then there's a couple from non-Hololive people, being Arkhand and people from the label Dova Syndrome. Dova Syndrome seems to be a label that a lot of them get their background music from. And some of the background music that they use has become like iconic to that specific VTuber. Like Amelia has one that is heavily associated with her and all that. And the artists from Dova Syndrome specifically are Sumochi, Noru, and Imataku. Okay. Music time. Let's talk about music. Took us a while to get here. Now we're here. These are the 5 critical tracks. We're going to start with the main theme of the game. This is Idol Showdown. This one is actually an original song. It is not an arrangement of anything. Though, in the clip, there is a leitmotif that will be important later. So, try and keep it in mind. But this song was composed by Hamsley. It is the main theme. It plays on the main menu of the game. And I don't know what to say other than it's pretty damn good, honestly. It's very, very fighting games. But, yeah, it's just this really cool electric guitar piece, and I wanted to include it because I wanted to include at least one of the original tracks that were written for the game.
And I feel like that's a pretty good one to pick. Gives me some butt rock vibes. Like, I could hear this being in, like a Sonic Adventure 2 kind of game, and it would kind of fit in alongside Crush 40 there. Yeah, really, really nice to hear an original piece, and I'm here for it.
All right, let's get into some arrangements. The first, critical track number 2, this is Symphony of Sora. This song was arranged by Hamsley. It is an arrangement / mashup of Kotobakaze, Image Source, and Rea Remo Sympathizer by Tokino Sora. I hope those... I know the middle one is correct, but I hope the other two are correct, because those names are only written in Japanese. And boy, I tried my best. This song plays on the main stage. The way music works in Idol Showdown is every stage has multiple songs, and you can pick which song plays while you're selecting the stage, or you can just select for it to play a random song. It's basically the way Smash does music, which I think is a good way to do it. And the part you hear in the clip, which is the beginning of the song, specifically that part is based on the song Image Source. And not only is this song, I think, kind of a jam, but, I mean, Sora deserves respect. She's the OG. She's the first member of Hololive. But in terms of like the energy levels of this song, they're pretty much the same as the original. And I think this really fits a fighting game character theme a lot.
It also tracks with, Hamsley's, the Idol Showdown piece, like kind of the same sort of instrument set going. But, leaning a little more on the synths, and that makes sense for some of the vocalization, or what would be vocals, but arranging it as such. Yeah, good energy on this one.
Well, the next one, critical track number 3, dives into some different instrumentalization. Yeah, sure, let's go with that. This is Shrine of the Elite. This was again arranged by Hamsley. In fact, on accident, all of the tracks are arranged by Hamsley. And sometimes a second person. Sometimes. I did not do that on purpose, but again, they were the musical leads, so they worked on a majority of the music in this game. This is an arrangement of Kagetsu no Yume by Sakura Miko, who plays on the stage Moonlit Gates. This is one of the best songs of the game. And apparently the team agrees with me on that, because this was also the song that was used in the game's reveal trailer. And the original is like a lot more electronic. It kind of reminds me of a Toho song, if I'm being quite honest. Maybe I'm wrong on that, considering I've heard 7 Toho songs in my life, and they were all on this show. But yeah, that's what it reminds me of. But changing it all over to Japanese instruments, and then adding in that electric guitar, really good call. I think this song works extremely well. And the title is a reference to something. I didn't understand what the inside joke with this was until recently. Everything I learn about Miko says she might need help. People refer to her as an elite gamer, or she is self-professed an elite gamer, I guess, which is codename for she's not good at stuff. And I wanted to know, the context behind that. And a couple weeks ago, they had a live that was half a concert, half a variety show, where I finally learned they talk about elite English when Miko is involved. And the whole challenge was that with Amelia Watson, she would read the description of something in English, and Amelia would have to say what that thing was, could not understand a damn word. And I wanted to look into if that was what it was like for all of them. And according to the virtual YouTuber wiki, it says, quote, fans tend to use the term elite, ironically, to highlight Miko's questionable decision-making skills, as well as her tendency to speak garbled nonsense punctuated by the occasional F-bomb. So that's cool. Anyways, this song is really, really good, and I really dig the Japanese instrumentals, and yeah, this is one of the best songs in the game.
I agree with that. The instrumentation is really nice, though it makes me wonder if the Japanese audience has any sort of reaction to a composer outside of their country using such instruments that are really iconic to their country, and if there's like any weird feelings about that. Like I was listening to something, someone was talking about how Japanese people see King of the Hill as the American anime, and how like there's a similar like dub versus sub conversation there, and so it just makes you wonder like how they would perceive maybe a Western composer like composing using their instruments, so to speak. It just makes me wonder about that. I mean, yeah, this is really good, and then when the electric guitar kicks in, that just brings it to a whole other level.
I'm not sure in general, but I believe I have seen a clip of Miko hearing this song and being pretty happy with it. So,
nice.
At least there. Again, most of the talents played this game and they heard most of the soundtrack, so. But my favorite song in the game is Critical Track number 4. This is Bloodlust. This was arranged by Hamsley once again. It is an arrangement of Red by Mori Calliope, which those are her vocals as well. Plays on the stage Moonlit Gates. Damn, this song rules. Red is already one of my favorite songs from Callie. Her music is absolutely fantastic, but Red is one of her best tracks. And this was already one of my favorites, even before I heard it, because I was excited to just see Red on here. There aren't a lot of songs that use the original vocals in them. I think by my count, there's 6 on the entire soundtrack that do. But I think this one is the best example of it. It's super hype. The original song is piano. Like, there's a lot of piano in it. But honestly, it translates to rock incredibly well. And my only complaint is that they left out my favorite part of the original song, which is the 3rd verse. But I can forgive that because the rest of the song is awesome. It gives me Guilty Gear vibes, personally. That's what I hear from a lot of this. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I feel that from a fighting game standpoint, though I feel like it would drop just as well, if not better, in a game like River City Girls or No Straight Roads. Yeah,
I could hear that, honestly. Yeah. From a fighting game standpoint, though, it being Guilty Gear would fit. Callie is actually a really big fan of Guilty Gear. She likes fighting games. I believe she, at one point, was like trying to organize a tournament within Hololive of Idol Showdown. I don't know if that continued. I don't know. But I love this damn song. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah, it's a nice one to highlight the vocals in there and pulling those clips to make that happen.
It's also one of the 2 songs on the soundtrack in English.
Well, that too.
All live English. And then Critical Track number 5. This is the final boss theme, actually, of the Virtual Frontier. This is final showdown. This was arranged by Hamsley and Nate, though from what I can tell, when I looked at Nate's YouTube channel, it's a lot of like guitar covers and stuff like that. So it might be that Nate is the guitarist on this track, but the credits did not go that in depth on it. This is an arrangement of Shiny Smiley Story by Hololive Idol Project, which, yes, is the most idol name for a song there could ever be. It's the final boss of the Virtual Frontier, and it's the perfect song to make that because Shiny Smiley Story is essentially the main theme of Hololive in general. They play it at every concert, usually to open that concert. Every unit eventually performs their own version of it. It's the Hololive song. So what better song to use for the final boss? And it kind of has phases to it, which I saw pointed out by a YouTube comment. It kind of starts out like really distorted and wrong because you're fighting a virus. The final boss is a like weird trippy character that has access to every single character on the roster's moves. And it's one round, and that round can go upwards of this entire song because it has a lot of health. But then in the middle around, the distortion is still present, but the actual song is kind of pushing through more and more. And then near the end of the song, the distortion is gone. And I assume because the song assumes that if you're still alive at that point, you're probably winning. And it works extremely well. I really, really dig this arrangement of this track.
Also, someone played Undertale.
It does sound a little bit like Undertale.
But that's nice, if something's like the main theme of Hololive, definitely bring that in through the final boss.
They couldn't make it the main menu theme. Holocure already did that, so I think it fits better here, though. I think it works really well. Alright, sometimes on the cutting room floor, I'll be like, I put 2 on Peter's because I needed help. I'm not even going to put up that front this time. These are all 4 from me.
Fair. Go nuts.
Not even going to pretend. The first one, I kind of can't wait to hear reactions to this one because I like it, but I can understand if other people would not. This is Big Red Beat. Once again, arranged by Hamsley, this is an arrangement of Red Heart by Akai Hato, or as she is more likely known nowadays, Hachama. It features her vocals, and it plays on the stage Gang City, which is a very detailed stage, honestly. This song kind of feels like a guilty pleasure, because it's a very, very idol song, or at least the original is. I'm not actually a huge fan of the original song, personally. I think this version is way better. Turning it into like a weird club beat is fun. I don't know. It's kind of goofy though, because Hachima has a very distinct voice. Let's put it that way. But I don't know. I dig this song a lot. I think it's fun.
Yeah, kind of sounds like VTubers, Japanese VTubers, like Korone trying to say English words. It definitely gives off that vibe. Yeah, it sure is a voice. That's a voice.
Hachima, as far as I'm aware, does speak okay English. She is considered one of the 2 reasons Hololive EN exists, because she was one of the first, people to sort of reach out to English-speaking fans. Also, she's a terrifying individual. Her most famous stream is, on stream, she cooked and ate a tarantula. And that started to define her entire brand, and I don't know why.
Dear Lord. Okay.
Yeah, Hachima scares me. Anyways, next track on the cutting room floor. This is Dreams of Fluffy Sheep. Again, arranged by Hamsley. This is an arrangement of my song, my Tsunomaki Watame. It plays on the stage Eternity Bright. It's again one of my favorite songs of the game. I'll never hear it in context. Unlocking Eternity Bright requires you to beat Virtual Frontier basically on hard mode, and I can't even beat it on normal. I'm really bad at fighting games. And I think it's also a lower tempo than the original, but the tone overall is roughly the same. That being said, the original doesn't have as... It feels softened, almost, this arrangement, which I guess fits if you're going to call it Dreams of Fluffy Sheep. It's called that because Watame is a sheep. That's her theme. She's a sheep. And honestly, listening to the original, it's kind of become one of my favorites out of the JP branch, and it kind of pushed me into... I'm just a fan of Watame in general, but I also really, really dig the violin in this song. I think that's not an instrument you hear enough in fighting games, and I think this song translates over to it very well.
There's also a nice little percussion, almost like a bamboo wind chime or something like that in there, and that's a really nice flavor added to it.
This has nothing to do with the song, but it has to do with Watame. When I was looking at her wiki page, this quote, I can't not... Quote, she seems to be okay with her fellow Hololive members eating her during collaboration streams, as she reassured her fans that even if she was eaten, she would respawn after an 8-second timer. What does that mean?
Your guess is as good as mine.
What the hell? For third track on the cutting room floor, this is A New Journey. This is once again arranged by Hamsley. It is an arrangement of Astro Girl by Tsukumo Sana. Plays on the map screen in the Virtual Frontier and has 3 sections. So the first section is kind of a more subdued song. The second section adds percussion. And then the third section, which is what you hear in the clip, adds the vocals. I was going to say that it featured just Sana's vocals, but actually, in the comments of the video, Hamsley posted a piece of trivia saying, quote, I compiled every recording of the song I could find and layered them all together, so all the girls are singing at once here. And that is significant for a reason. It hurts to put this on the cutting room floor more than any of the others. Astro Girl is kind of a very meaningful song to people that are fans of Hololive English. Sana is the only member of Hololive English that has graduated. She graduated last year, just over a year ago, right before her 1-year anniversary, because of a back injury that made it so that she could not sit up for long periods of time anymore. And it's the only graduation stream I've ever watched, and God, I hope it stays that way, because I did not expect for it to hit as hard as it did. And I'm not the only one. Like, multiple of our friends also, did not expect it to... It was an incredibly sad stream to watch, but it was also nice, I guess. So you can imagine that when those vocals kind of come in, it kind of hits like a truck for a lot of people. And then you read about it being all the girls together, which I assume means all of Council, which was what her generation was. And then that truck turns into a train. And I really like this arrangement in general, but just because of that emotional connection, I had to bring it up somewhere.
I feel like there's nothing I can say to add to that. It's not the energy I'd expect for a fighting game song, but it feels like it's a good inclusion just to have something to mix it up.
Mm-hmm. And the final track, this one was actually added in the latest update, and I'm contractually obligated to bring it up because, in case anybody's wondering, my Oshi is Nina Mai Inanis, and this is her song in the game. This is Wahoy!
Oya oya, Yolan. Are you lost? Is it because you're not here in my arms?
One More Time for the Road. This was arranged by Hamsley. It is an arrangement / mashup of Ahoy by Hosho Marine and Violet by Nina Mai Inanis, and it also features multiple voice clips of Ina. It's for a stage called the Aquamarine, which was added in the Pekora update, the latest update. And there are two versions of the song. There's one that's just Ahoy, that is very high energy and fun. And then if you're playing that track on the stage in the second round, suddenly it is nighttime and the ship is being torn apart basically by a kraken, and Ina is now in the doorway terrorizing the ship, so they did something to piss her off. And it becomes this. Ahoy is generally the same general tone that you would hear here, but Violet is an extremely calm and soothing song. So obviously here it is now sounding like you're fighting a damn boss in a Final Fantasy game. Fits well, actually. I think there are a lot of great touches in this song, though. There's a choir in certain parts that is musically chanting Ina's name. And it also includes voice clips of her saying her name, as well as Wah. The reason the song is called Wahoy is because that is how Ina greets the stream. She says Wah. That's it. That's all. That's the whole thing. And there's also a long quote that is kind of existentially terrifying, followed by a really well implemented laugh. That's what you heard in the clip. And all the music in the Pekora update is really great. There's one that sounds straight out of Castlevania. It's really good, but I mean, this one's by Ina. I had to bring it up. It's also a really good song in general, to be fair.
It is, and it's nice to hear a sample of like what it's like to take the voice clips from the stream and kind of bring them in there.
I don't remember when she said that quote. I do know I was there. I don't even remember what the whole quote is, and it's kind of hard to make it out in the music. But is it because you're not here? And like the laugh afterwards, perfectly implemented. I love it. All right, what'll I never forget about Idol Showdown? In general, I'm just gonna... I know a lot of people like write off Hololive as just weeb stuff, and look, I don't blame anybody for that. At the end of the day, they're just streamers. That's all they are. And they're really good streamers too. Like, they're extremely talented, and given the resources that they are given, they are able to do a lot of like really fun stuff. Myth, like I mentioned, debuted in 2020, September specifically. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but 2020 sucked for everyone. Getting into them and like basically watching them from the beginning kind of made that year a little bit more tolerable at the tail end, and then helped in 2021 as well. And I don't know, I don't know why I've never had this experience with any YouTuber or anything like that, but there's just a sense of community among that. And there are a lot of really talented people in the Hololive fandom, and this game is a great example of that. Like, this is a functional fighting game with a full single-player mode, adding characters that even the FGC was like, yeah, no, this is pretty good. And it's free. And, like, fans just made it. And that's really cool to me. And in general, it's just really neat to, like, watch them from the beginning and, like, see them get, like, successful and after a while, like they start getting more comfortable in the streaming job and their personality starts coming out more. Some of them are some of the funniest goddamn people I've ever seen. Gavis Bettel of Holostars EN. One of the funniest, most naturally entertaining people I've ever witnessed, ever. His Sims 4 streams are maybe some of the funniest streams I've ever watched. I can see why it looks weird from the outside, but I think the general sense of community in there, that's something that I really appreciate from Hololive in general. And again, I think Idol Showdown is a great example of that community really like shining.
Yeah, I think, just because I don't have time to devote to streamers or anything like that, for those that are in that community, like there is all the value in the world for finding that community that works for you and gives you entertainment, gives you a sense of belonging, and finding others that share in that community. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you have people in that community that are so talented to make a game like this and then music on top of it. That's some really good wholesome stuff right there.
That being said, the people in the community that get mad when the girls interact with the guys can jump in a lake.
You know what? I was going to ask about
yeah, it's still a thing.
Idol culture.
It is a very minor part of the fan base, but there are people in the fan base that get extremely angry when any of the girls interact with any of the guys. And luckily, most of the girls don't care, because obviously, being the internet, they're the ones that take the brunt of the anger.
Yeah.
But there are still a couple that you can tell are clearly uncomfortable with the idea and won't do it because, it's not worth it. And I don't blame them at all. But yeah, unfortunately, that aspect of idol culture was brought forward. And for the most part, those people are considered a minority and told to shut up.
At least there's hopefully some good self-moderation there. And yeah, that takes some thick skin to be a part of that and to put yourself out there like that, for sure. Well, a lot of names, certainly some character names there with Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, and Idol Showdown. But good music through it all, and hopefully we brought that to you today. And that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. You can find the video version of the show on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want. And that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasherpieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasherpieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe, from Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have an MP3 podcast episode feed there on Spotify. But also, we have a video game music playlist. And if we talk about a track on the show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big, huge playlist. Joe, is anything added this week?
So, Namco Bandai has still not put most of their stuff on streaming services. God, give me the Katamari soundtracks. I swear to God, Namco. So, Baten Kaitos is not on there. And obviously, being a soundtrack full of fan arrangements, Idol Showdown is not on there either. The originals are, but obviously I'm not going to put those on the playlist. I might do a Twitter thread when the episode comes out, linking to the originals on YouTube. But other than that, yeah, nothing's getting added this week, unfortunately.
But, there's still plenty there for you to listen to. And when you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST, where you can give us some feedback on how you're liking the episodes, what did we miss, and also give us some games to cover in the future. All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I'm going to get considerably less anime next week by talking about Carlos Viola.
And I'll be throwing it back by talking about Dan Forden. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
So obviously I'm not going to find a fan remix or cover from this game because it's a soundtrack of fan remixes. So I figure what better to use than the credits song of the game, which is called Ding Ding Ding. It is based on a song called Eternal Summer Sea by Imataku of Dova Syndrome. Apparently the story is Sakura Miko was using it as background music during a stream of the game Raft, and she apparently just started singing along to it because she thought it was catchy. So they made this song out of it. Everything I learned about Miko kind of scares me, but also it's just kind of cute. So yeah, this is Ding Ding Ding. Please enjoy.
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.